Welcome back to ASTR, bringing together the Adventist Church's past and present in order to inspire for the future. We're so glad to have you with us again in episode 13. We appreciate so much those of you who are regular viewers and those who have let us know that you're enjoying the program. In this episode, Elizabeth Henry, our digital records manager, shares some exciting news about recent major additions to the ASTR online archive website. Then Dr. Michael Juncker, assistant editor of the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, joins me as we share another inspiring story from the ESDA. To conclude, Meredith Carter, editor of the annual statistical report, shares youth ministry statistics. But first, let's look at what happened this week in Adventist history. On June 26, in 1842, Ellen Gould Harmon, then aged 15, was baptized by immersion in the waters of Casco Bay off the coast of the U.S. state of Maine, and the same day she was received into the Methodist Church. Starting June 27 in 1985, the 54th General Conference session met in New Orleans with 1,853 delegates present. President Neil C. Wilson and Secretary G. Ralph Thompson were both re-elected. General Conference Treasurer Lance L. Butler retired and was replaced by Donald F. Gilbert. And the World Church introduced a global initiative, Harvest 90, intended to focus church members' attention on evangelism and church growth in the 5 years building up to the 1990 General Conference session. On June 29, 1820, Joseph Harvey Waggoner was born. In 1851, when he first heard Sabbatarian Adventist teaching, he was the joint editor and publisher of a newspaper in Baraboo, Wisconsin. A Baptist, he became an Adventist in 1852. J. H. Waggoner became prominent among the leaders of the embryonic movement and was one of the first adherents to call himself a Seventh-day Adventist. In the early 1860s, he took a leading part in the discussions that led the Sabbatarian Adventists to organize the Seventh-day Adventist Church. In 1868, he was one of the speakers at the first Seventh-day Adventist camp meeting held at Wright, Michigan. In 1881, Waggoner succeeded James White in the editorship of the Signs of the Times, and he then contributed much to the growth and influence of that weekly paper. Church-state relations were prominent at this time, and so Waggoner was asked to edit a new journal to be called the American Sentinel. The first issue, published in 1885, was mostly written by Waggoner. In the same year, he published a book, The Atonement, in which he articulated his clear convictions on the doctrine of righteousness by faith. Younger Adventist pastors were influenced by his teaching on this subject, including his son, Elliot J. Waggoner, and Alonzo T. Jones, and the two men were prominent in preaching about righteousness by faith in 1888. In 1886, meanwhile, Joseph Waggoner had been sent as a missionary to Europe to help in building up the mission work there. He became editor-in-chief of the German and French church papers, contributed regularly to other periodicals, and wrote the book From Eden to Eden, completed just before his death. Joseph H. Waggoner died in 1889 at the age of 69. And on June 30, 1989, 34 years ago this week, the relocation of the General Conference headquarters from Tacoma Park to Silver Spring, Maryland, was completed. The headquarters where we are recording this has been in Silver Spring ever since. That was this week in Adventist history.
Have you ever wondered what stories have shaped our fate? What timeless wisdom lies within the pages of our history? Well, today, we embark on a journey to uncover a treasure trove of knowledge that has inspired Seventh-day Adventists for over a century. The Adventist Review is a publication that has chronicled the growth and development of our faith for generations. It has had many names over the years. The Present Truth in 1850, Second Advent Review and Sabbath Herald in 1850 through 1851, the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald from 1851 to 1961, Review and Herald from 1961 to 1971, and again the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald between 1971 to 1978 before being renamed Adventist Review in 1978, but has always been familiarly known to church members as the Review. However, here's the burning question. How can one read past issues of this important and influential periodical? Through extensive efforts, past issues of the Adventist Review, going back as far as 1850, have been meticulously preserved, digitized, and uploaded to the ASTR's online archives, making them accessible to anyone seeking a connection to our spiritual and historical roots. In addition, the Office of Archive Statistics and Research, in partnership with Adventist Review, is pleased to announce that the online archives website at documents.adventistarchives.org has recently been updated to include past issues up to 2018. More recent issues can be found at the Adventist Review website. Imagine immersing yourself in the thoughts and insights that have shaped our faith, walking alongside pioneers and visionaries from the generations that came before us. With just a few taps of your keyboard or your phone, you can unlock a wealth of knowledge, seamlessly blending the wisdom of the past with the realities of the present. So whether you're a seeker of the truth, a lover of history, or simply curious about the roots of our faith, the Adventist Review has something extraordinary in store for you. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to explore our spiritual heritage. To read the Adventist Review and many other periodicals, visit the online archives today at documents.adventistarchives.org.
Today's story from the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, which can be freely accessed at encyclopedia.adventist.org, is about Orley and Lillian Ford, champion missionaries to South and Central America. The Fords served in Peru, Ecuador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and predominantly El Salvador, the country they considered their second home.
In December 1917, Orley and Lillian Ford, recently married and in their early 20s, set sail for what would be their first adventure in a lifetime of mission experiences. They arrived in Peru on January 13, 1918. When the Fords arrived at the Pamata mission, they were met by R.A. Nelson, a missionary who had been there for almost a year. Nelson had to leave due to his wife's deteriorating health, but stayed an additional couple of weeks to help the Fords settle in.
From the beginning, the young couple faced many challenges. The Pamata mission had an unfinished church and house. Pastor Ford, busy treating some 30 patients a day and carrying out other responsibilities, had no prior knowledge of carpentry, yet he managed to finish the house and the church building. The Fords didn't speak Spanish when they arrived, but in 3 months they were able to communicate fluently in the language, and soon they had 30 people prepared for baptism.
Pamata had a population of some 10,000 people, and the only health center was at the Adventist mission run by the Fords. This photo shows Pastor Ford performing a dental exam.
One of the more notable experiences of their ministry in Peru happened when Pastor Ford received an urgent request to treat the son of a local chief. The boy was about to die from a gangrenous leg. The locals called it a warlock leg. Amputation was the only way to save the boy's life. With just 4 months of medical training, Pastor Ford not only knew little about surgical procedures, he also had no surgical instruments. Yet he did the best he could with improvised tools and, according to his words, God did the rest. With a butcher knife, a carpenter's saw, and without anesthesia, he removed the boy's leg. But in a short time, the youth was completely healed.
The successful surgery helped Pastor Ford win the hearts of a family who had been hostile to the mission and enabled him to get closer to hundreds in a tribe that hadn't wanted to listen to his message.
At the end of his time at the Pomata mission, Pastor Ford had 28 requests to open schools. The local church, despite its capacity to seat 400 people, was not big enough, and many who came to worship had to remain outside the building. Ford prepared 75 people for baptism and had more than 400 people in a new baptismal class. Clearly, he and Lillian had won the hearts of the local community.
The Fords were next asked to serve in Ecuador. Here they are pictured right at the beginning of their service in Ecuador. At the end of 1921, they arrived at the port of Guayaquil, where they began their long journey by train to Quito, the capital. They had been praying that God would direct them to the right place to work and asked that, as a sign, He provide them with a house surrounded by people who welcomed them.
Pastor Ford spent several weeks visiting various potential sites, but no one was willing to offer him a home. When he felt impressed to visit the Colta region, many tried to discourage him. They told him that criminals lived there and that it was a terrible place to live. Ignoring the comments, he visited Colta and was surprised to find a community of 20,000 people.
The first home he visited was that of a prestigious and influential man who was sick. As Pastor Ford began treating him, some neighbors arrived at the house, curious to see the strange visitor. Pastor Ford told them that God had sent him and Lillian to open schools and heal people, and that if they wanted, he and his family could live among them. The people who had no schools expressed great interest. Pastor Ford explained that in order to live there, he needed a house for his family, a house for his interpreter, and a place for a school. When Pastor Ford visited Colta again, he noticed 3 freshly built huts, one for the interpreter, a second for a school, and a third taller than the others to accommodate his at least 6'4" height. In this photo, you can see the Fords' home in Colta. Friendly and kind to the Fords, the villagers requested that Orley stay with them and teach them how to live and become Christians.
At the end of 1922, Orley Ford became very ill, worn out from treating about 4,000 people a month and accepting invitations to preach in many new areas. Doctors recommended that he immediately undergo surgery, but he didn't want to leave his post until a replacement could arrive. However, the mission had no money to send for anyone else. Finally, Pastor Ford's brother John and his wife left California and headed to Ecuador on December 7 to work among the people Orley had served for a year. Soon after their arrival, Orley and Lillian Ford were able to go on their first furlough, or long vacation, that they were entitled to as foreign missionaries. Back in the United States, Orley received the medical attention he urgently needed.
In October 1924, the Fords returned to Lake Colta. In the following years, they obtained government permission to open a school, and a church was already built at the Colta Mission. What the Ford families accomplished at Lake Colta Mission began to produce an abundant harvest as the principal cities in the country became open to receiving the Adventist message. The Fords were successful in their mission work in South and Central America because they shared the love of Jesus by living among the people, ministering to their needs and treating them with the utmost respect. In this photo, Orley and Lillian are wearing the traditional dress of the Peruvian Aymara Indians.
When Pastor Orley Ford died on November 19, 1972, he had established a record in the Adventist World Church as the missionary who had served the longest outside his country, having dedicated 45 years to South and Central America. Lillian passed away on December 8, 1990. At their request, both were buried in El Salvador, their second home as they used to call it, in San Salvador, the city where they had built their last church. We invite you to read more about the Fords and other Adventist missionaries in the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists at encyclopedia.adventist.org. That's encyclopedia.adventist.org.
Welcome to the latest statistical nugget from the ASTR Data Collection and Publication team. For today's statistical nugget, let's dive into the Youth Ministries World Statistics. We know that youth have a great impact in the Seventh-day Adventist fulfillment of the Great Commission. The Youth Ministry Statistics Table was last published in the 2019 Annual Statistical Report, but the statistics are still collected annually by the Office of Archives, Statistics, and Research, and continue to be compiled and analyzed for statistical purposes. For evaluation and comparison, in 2011, the number of youth in AY societies was 68,557, and in 2021, the figure rose to 97,859. This is a 43% increase in a 10-year span. There was also an increase in AY membership of 7%, from 2,773,989 in 2011 to 2,980,622 in 2021. Ambassador clubs more than doubled from 12,473 in 2011 to 26,577 in 2021. Ambassador membership grew remarkably by 284%, from 195,061 in 2011 to 749,036 in 2021. In the area of Pathfinders, the clubs grew from 35,812 in 2011 to 61,202 in 2021, and with overall Pathfinder membership, the figures rose from 1,352,920 in 2011 to 1,614,130 in 2021. Regarding adventurers, the clubs more than doubled from 26,454 in 2011 to 58,163 in 2021. Overall, adventurer membership was the only area that declined by 11%, from 1,433,040 in 2011 to 1,275,811 in 2021. The number of public campus ministries chapters recently began reporting in 2019 and have held steady from 4,687 in 2019 to 4,685 in 2021. In addition, the number of public campus ministries members increased from 148,685 members in 2019 to 212,895 by 2021. For more information on world statistics of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, go to AdventistStatistics.org. That's AdventistStatistics.org.
Thank you again for watching this episode of ASTR. We're so glad you were able to join us. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on YouTube and please share it with your friends. And if you've enjoyed this show, you can receive more informative and inspiring content on our social media channels. Go to Facebook or Twitter and search for Adventist Archives. Join us again next time as we bring you the best of Adventist history and today.